I stood in the mahogany conference room, my son grinning like he'd already buried me. I'm Frank Delaney, 58 years old, warehouse logistics manager for a regional supply company, nothing fancy but honest work. I've spent most of my life lifting other people's loads at home and everywhere else. Maybe that's why standing in that polished conference room felt so strange. Everything smelled like money and old power, and my own family looked at me like I didn't belong in either. Cole, my son, sat across from me with that smirk he'd perfected over the last decade, half amusement, half victory lap. My ex-wife Marla crossed her legs like the room had been built just for her, already imagining all the ways she'd manage whatever my father left behind. And Jenna, my daughter, she kept her eyes on the table, tracing the grain of the wood like she wished she could disappear into it. The lawyer cleared his throat and I braced myself. I knew humiliation was coming. I could feel it in Cole's eager grin, in Marla's slow smile, but then the lawyer hesitated. He turned the page 2, and something shifted in his eyes. That was the moment my entire family learned what my father never said out loud. "Dad gets $1, Cole read aloud before the lawyer could stop him. Hearing that sentence spoken in that room felt like somebody had taken a match to the last whisper of dignity I carried. The words ricocheted off the polished walls and landed on me like a verdict. Cole laughed too loud, like a kid at a cruel joke. Marla's smile widened just enough to show the satisfaction she'd practiced for years. Jenna's fingers clenched against the table until her knuckles blanched. She stared down at the wood as if the grain could swallow what had just happened. I told myself to stay calm. I told myself I had seen worse. I had not. Standing there, my shoes scuffed from years of walking floors and fixing pallets, between a family that had learned to display victory and a lawyer who cleared his throat like a priest about to announce a sentence, I felt every old shame and private failure open up. Russell Crane raised a hand. He's the kind of man whose voice can steady a courtroom and on a good day a bar. "Let me finish," he said, not impatient but precise. That should have been enough to cut through the laughter, but it didn't. The air kept tasting like someone else's triumph. Cole's laugh kept going, and I saw the shape of him in that moment. All the years I'd tried to teach him small things, how to check a tire, how to balance a checkbook, how to hold a job. He'd treated those lessons like a museum exhibit, interesting relics of a man he'd moved beyond. He'd always said I never aimed high, as if ambition were something you could carry like a briefcase. I remembered cheap Sunday mornings when he'd called me stubborn for not taking risks. Later, when money had come easy for him, he called me old-fashioned with a smirk that cut deeper than any insult. That flash of memory, Cole at 12, hands sticky from soda, daring me to climb the rusty oak behind our house, stayed with me as Russell cleared his throat again. The man folded his reading glasses and looked at me with the kind of sympathy that's almost cruel in its gentleness. "This will is more complicated than it appears," he said, and even the room leaned in. Humiliation was a precise thing. It arrives slow in stages. First the joke, then the ripple of acceptance, then the quiet bargaining with yourself. Maybe he was only joking, maybe everyone will forget. But then Marla's smirk hardened into something colder, and Jenna's shoulders shook once, tiny and human. The laughter stopped, falling away like leaves. It gathered at the edges like smoke you can't quite chase down. Russell tapped the paper, eyes steady. "There are layers to what your father set up," he told them, and the words seemed to hang between us, layers like an old house with hidden rooms. I wanted to know what those rooms held. I wanted to know if any of them had been left for me. "Before I explain page 2, Russell said, "Frank deserves to know something his own father kept secret." I hadn't thought about the locked green box in years. It came back to me the moment Russell said my father kept secrets. That box had lived on the top shelf of my father's workshop, dusty, dented, and always locked tight. I used to stare at it when I was a kid, wondering what piece of machinery or strange treasure he kept inside. My father wasn't mysterious in the dramatic sense. He was quiet, methodical, the kind of man who sanded a table leg until it felt like silk. But every evening around 6, he'd slip into that workshop and close the door. He'd stay there for hours. Sometimes a car I didn't recognize would pull up and a man in a suit would step inside. Other times a letter would arrive, no return address, just his name in thick black ink. He'd read it alone at the kitchen table, fold it twice, then disappear into the workshop again. When I was older, I tried asking him about it. He'd smile, the kind of smile you give a child who isn't supposed to know the truth yet. One day, he'd say, "Not now." Marla used to roll her eyes whenever I talked about my father's habits. "He wasn't a spy, Frank," she said once at a neighborhood cookout, loud enough for the Hendersons to hear. "Just a blue-collar dreamer with secret projects that never went anywhere." People laughed politely. I laughed too, even though it stung. Back in the conference room, Russell continued reading my father's letter aloud. His voice was steady, but something about the words pulled me straight back to those nights. The workshop light glowing under the door, the faint smell of machine oil, the low hum of whatever quiet world he lived in. Then Russell read a line I'd forgotten until that second. "Frank, if the time comes, ask yourself one question: do you trust blood, son?" That sentence hit me harder than Cole's laughter ever could. I remembered the night my father asked it. He'd been thinner than usual, leaning on the kitchen counter like gravity had turned mean. "Trust blood," I'd repeated. He nodded once, that was all. I thought he meant family loyalty, the usual father-son talk. I didn't understand he meant something deeper, something he never explained because death got to him before truth did. Cole groaned loudly and let his chair thump back onto 4 legs. "Can we skip the sentimental scrapbook?" he muttered. "Get to the money part." His words sliced through the room. Marla didn't correct him. Jenna just curled into herself, eyes down again. And me, I sat there remembering a father I never fully knew, a man who hid pieces of himself in green boxes and late-night letters, a man who asked me a question I hadn't earned the answer to. Russell raised his hand for silence, not that Cole ever respected authority unless it came with a paycheck. The lawyer's eyes sharpened as he reached into his briefcase and laid a folder gently on the table. It was thick, overstuffed, the edges frayed like it had lived several lives before reaching us. He slid it toward me. "Your father wasn't who you thought he was," Russell said, opening the cover, "and neither is your inheritance." Russell slid a thick envelope across the table, addressed only to me. No return address. No name, just Frank written in my father's unmistakable blocky handwriting, the same way he labeled every tool he owned. My throat tightened as I picked it up. The paper felt heavier than it should, as if the truth inside had weight. I slid a finger beneath the seal and opened it carefully, like something alive might be sleeping inside. Inside was a handwritten letter, several pages long, written in dark ink that bled a little at the edges. The first line stopped my breath. "If you're reading this, I didn't get to explain in person." My father went on to describe things I'd never imagined. He'd quietly invested in a small logistics company decades ago, one that had grown beyond anything he expected. He didn't tell me because, as he put it, money shows people's teeth, and he hadn't trusted the people around me at the time. I didn't have to guess who he meant. Then the words came sharper. "After Marla began moving funds without your knowledge, I shifted my holdings into protected accounts. Not to punish you, son, to protect you." I blinked. "Moving funds?" I said out loud, shocked. Marla scoffed. "Oh, Frank, please, I never touched your father's money. This is absurd." Cole jumped in immediately, waving a hand. "Yeah, Dad, seriously, what fantasy world is this? You've never had any real assets. You'd screw up a lemonade stand." Their voices overlapped loud enough that Russell finally lifted a palm. Everyone quiet, but Cole wasn't done. "This is planted. Dad probably told him some sob story years ago and now he's trying to make it true." I felt my ears burn, not just from the accusation, but from the way he said dad like it meant fool, not father. Jenna sat stiff as a board, eyes wide, her hands knotted tightly in her lap. She didn't say a word, but the fear in her face said she understood more than any of us. I looked back at the letter. My father explained why he'd pulled away during the final months of my marriage. He discovered financial gaps, checks missing, accounts draining. He didn't confront Marla directly, but he warned me subtly. I didn't listen. I was too busy trying to keep my family afloat, blind to the holes forming under my feet. Then came another revelation. There is a second property. One no one knows about, not your mother, not your sister, not Marla. When the time comes, you'll understand why. My heart thudded. A second property. My father never owned more than our small house growing up, or so I thought. Cole laughed sharply. A secret property? What is this, a soap opera? Marla crossed her arms. He's lying. Your father never trusted you with anything important. I felt something shift inside me, not anger exactly, but a kind of slow awakening. Maybe I didn't know everything about my father. Maybe I'd been standing in the shadow of a story he wasn't ready to tell. Russell closed the folder, his eyes suddenly sharper. Frank, he said, standing, we need a witness for what comes next. He walked to the door, opened it, and motioned someone inside. Someone none of us expected. My neighbor Linda stepped inside like she'd been waiting for this day. Gray-streaked hair pulled into a neat twist, denim jacket, expression calm as a settled lake. She wasn't family, wasn't a lawyer, but she stood in that doorway with the certainty of someone holding a missing puzzle piece. Cole muttered under his breath, then louder, "What's the yard sale lady doing here?" Linda didn't flinch. She offered him a polite, pitying smile, the kind that ages a person 10 years in a single second. "Nice to see you too, Cole, still spending money faster than you can earn it." His face snapped into a glare. Russell motioned for her to sit. "Mrs. Shaw is here because she was entrusted with something by Frank's father." My chest tightened. Entrusted by my father. Linda reached into her tote bag and lifted out a metal lockbox. Old, scratched, and unmistakably the one from my childhood, the green paint chipped away over the years, leaving ghostly flecks at the edges. "I've been keeping this for over a decade," Linda said. "Your father gave it to me before the divorce started, told me to hold it until the right moment." Cole snorted. "Why would he give you anything? You're not even related." Linda turned to him with a slow, deliberate look. "Because I mind my business, Cole. And because your grandfather trusted people who didn't have a financial agenda." Marla stiffened, twisting her bracelet. She hated losing control of a narrative, and now the room was slipping away from her one fact at a time. Linda continued. "Your grandfather met with attorneys long before the divorce. I saw them come and go. I brought him coffee once. Don't worry, I didn't eavesdrop, but I recognized the same gentleman who's sitting here today." She nodded at Russell. Cole's jaw dropped. "You're saying Grandpa had lawyers way back then, for what?" "Maybe he saw the writing on the wall," Linda said softly. "Some people do." Marla's face tightened, lips thinning like she was biting down on her own tongue. For years, she'd spun stories, how my father disliked me, how he pulled away because he thought I was weak. But now, a witness with no stake in the family was undoing her revision one thread at a time. Russell backed Linda up. "It's true. Frank's father sought legal counsel years ago. He made long-term plans to protect his assets." I felt the room tilt slightly. My father, quiet, unassuming, tinkering in his workshop, had been preparing for a storm he apparently saw coming long before I did. Cole looked between us wildly, as if searching for a joke he couldn't find. "This is insane. Grandpa was a nobody." Linda tapped the lockbox. "Nobodies don't guard metal boxes like gold, Cole." He opened his mouth to fire back, but Marla shot him a warning look, the first crack in her armor. Jenna finally whispered, "Dad, you should open it." Linda slid the lockbox across the table, the metal scraping softly like an old truth clearing its throat. "Open it, Frank," she said. "It changes everything." The lockbox smelled like old metal and secrets, the kind of smell that clings to something hidden too long, part rust, part time itself. My hands shook a little as I lifted the lid. I wasn't sure whether I expected treasure or disappointment. What I found was something heavier than either. Right on top sat a ring of keys, thin, worn, each labeled with my father's handwriting. Unit A office, North Garage. I didn't recognize any of those places. Beneath the keys lay a thick stack of documents neatly bound together. Russell leaned in. "Go ahead, Frank." I lifted the first set, property deeds, not for our childhood home. Not for any address I'd ever visited. These were tied to commercial lots, warehouses, small office spaces, a garage on the outskirts of town. My breath caught. My father had owned all this. Marla snatched one of the pages, scanning it fast, her face drained. This must be a mistake. But it was. The deeds were notarized, dated, and stamped clean. Then came the photos, old, sun-worn, tucked into a brown envelope. I slid them out and froze. There was Marla, 30 years younger, standing too close to a man I'd never met. His hand rested on her lower back. Another photo showed them stepping into a car together. The timestamps placed them squarely during the era Marla had sworn she was working late to support us. A soft gasp came from Jenna. Cole's face went pale, almost sick. He tried to cover it with a scoff. "So what? Ancient history," but his voice cracked. Marla straightened her spine. "Those photos mean nothing. Your father was paranoid, Frank. He probably hired someone to follow me." "Looks like he was right too," Linda murmured. But tucked beneath the photos was something even more unbelievable. A contract typed, signed, and notarized. A contract transferring controlling interest of a growing logistics company, Delaney Freight Holdings, to me as successor. Dated 15 years ago, I felt the world narrow to a thin point. My father had planned for me to take over a business I didn't even know he owned. Russell nodded solemnly. "Your father invested early, very early. He built something quietly, and he wanted it to pass to you when you were ready." Cole coughed out a laugh. "Dad, a business owner, please." He couldn't manage a sandwich shop. But his eyes betrayed him, wide, frightened, calculating. He understood the numbers. He understood what controlling interest meant. As I shuffled through the papers, one last object slid free, a second sealed envelope, thick and cream-colored. Across the front in my father's writing were 5 chilling words: "Activate upon humiliation, Frank." A hush fell over the room. Even Cole stopped breathing for a second. My pulse thundered. I slid a thumb under the seal, hesitating a moment. What had my father expected? What humiliation had he foreseen? What had he known about today about them? The envelope opened with a soft tear. I looked inside and gasped. I had never seen my name next to that many zeros. The document inside the envelope wasn't a letter, it was a notarized addendum, updated just 18 months before my father died. The first line alone made my breath catch. Frank Delaney inherits 62% controlling shares of Delaney Freight Holdings, evaluated at $18.7 million. For a moment I thought I'd misread it. Me, the son who could barely afford a newer car, the man whose own family treated him like a harmless footnote. Cole's mouth fell open so wide he looked unhinged. The sound he made, half choke, half disbelief, echoed around the mahogany walls like karma had developed perfect timing. Marla lunged forward. "This is forged, ridiculous. Frank never had a role in that company. He doesn't have the skill set." Russell didn't even blink. "Mrs. Dixon, the shares were purchased by Frank's father long before the divorce. The documents are verified, audited, and recognized by the board." Marla's face lost color fast. She opened her mouth to keep fighting, but Russell lifted a single finger, the legal version of hush now. She shut it. The room went silent except for the faint ticking of the wall clock, and in that quiet, Cole's earlier laughter replayed in my head. "Dad gets $1. The smug grin, the snort, the victory. Now the same silence he'd weaponized was crushing him instead. His cheeks burned red. He kept shifting in his seat like he wanted to melt through the leather. Jenna stared at me with wide, shining eyes, shock and relief mixed together. Linda smiled softly just once, like she'd known some version of this truth long before any of us. I forced myself to keep reading. Below the inheritance line was a paragraph with bold lettering. These assets transfer only if Frank fulfills the final request to reveal the truth that was buried for the sake of appearances. I frowned. Reveal what truth? Russell looked almost regretful. Your father believed your silence during the divorce cost you more than money. He believed someone else controlled the story. He wanted his heir to reclaim his name publicly. My stomach twisted. I didn't need details to know what he meant. Marla's lies, the rumors, the way she'd painted me as unstable, unreliable, unambitious. I'd swallowed all of it for the kids' sake, for peace. Cole leaned forward. So what, you have to badmouth Mom online or something, make a big scene? Dad won't do that. He's him. He said the word like it was an insult, just him, just Frank, but Russell wasn't finished. There is more, he said, flipping the page. If you refuse the request, the shares and properties will not pass to you. My chest tightened. Then who? Russell looked me dead in the eye. Someone else inherits everything instead. The room inhaled all at once, Marla stiff, Cole leaning forward, Jenna whispering, Dad. Russell closed the document calmly as if he'd just announced the weather. Frank, he said, this is the moment your father built all of this around. If you choose silence again, he already named a replacement. The words hit like a hammer, and the cliffhanger hung in the air like a storm ready to break. The letter said only one line: do not let pride steal your future like it stole mine. I read it 3 times, each pass hitting harder than the last. Pride, my father, quiet, stubborn, loyal to a fault, had always seemed unshakable, but the words were his, written in the shaky script of his final months. There was a story behind them one he'd never shared. Russell handed me another folded page. Your father wanted you to see this too. I opened it carefully. Inside was a memory I didn't recognize, my father's confession, written like he was finally laying down a burden. He'd lost his marriage decades earlier because he'd kept financial secrets tucked away, thinking he was protecting his family. Instead, his silence let others, his own brothers, greedy and manipulative, twist the narrative. They made my mother believe he'd gambled the money away, that he'd been reckless, untrustworthy. By the time he tried to explain, the damage was done. Pride kept him from fighting publicly. Pride kept him from reclaiming his name. And pride turned him into the quiet, withdrawn man he became in the years that followed. The parallel punched straight through me. Marla had spun her own stories about me, stories I let stand for the sake of keeping the peace, for keeping the kids out of the battlefield. I let her narrate our divorce like she was the tragic hero, and I was the man who checked out, who didn't try, who lacked ambition. I had repeated my father's mistakes without even knowing it. Linda spoke softly. Your father didn't want you living his life twice. I didn't answer. I could. I felt Jenna's eyes on me, timid but desperate. And inside me, 2 instincts waged war. One wanted to honor my father by stepping into the truth, no matter how ugly. The other, the quiet, gentle part of me, wanted to keep my kids sheltered, even if they were adults now. Publicly exposing Marla meant dragging the old divorce wounds into daylight. People would talk. My kids would have to hear it all, what she'd done, how she'd lied, what she'd stolen. Did I want that? Did they? I took a breath. I don't know if I can, Dad, Jenna's voice cracked slightly. She hadn't spoken much during the entire will reading, her gaze mostly fixed on her hands or the carpet. Now she lifted her face toward me. Her eyes glistened, not with tears yet, but with something close to fear. Dad, she whispered again, you need to know something. Cole groaned. Jenna, please, not another dramatic moment. But Jenna didn't look at him. She kept her eyes locked on mine as if bracing herself against gravity. Her fingers twisted together so tightly that her knuckles popped. I swallowed. What is it, sweetheart? She stood slowly like a newborn deer pushing its legs under itself, every part of her trembling. Her chair scraped the floor, cutting through the room's heavy silence. Even Marla froze, reading something dangerous in her daughter's posture. Jenna inhaled, chest shaking. Mom told us a lie about you. Jenna's voice cracked. Dad, you never abandoned us. When Jenna stood, the room felt suddenly too small. She'd been quiet all afternoon, but now she rose like someone who'd been holding a secret until it almost broke her. "Dad," she said, voice thin, "you never abandoned us." The words hit harder than any insult Cole had thrown. Cole scoffed, then fell silent. Marla's practiced composure wavered. I felt my hands go cold. Jenna slid a folded printout across the table. It was an email dated the week after I left the house, Marla's name in the header. The subject, settle his access. I read it aloud. Marla had instructed the bank to redirect payments, freeze accounts, and remove my access. She'd written phrases like "he chose this" and "block him for the kid's sake." She'd turned my confusion and panic into a permanent record of abandonment. I remember that morning, keys clenched, breath shallow, the bank teller's bored face telling me I had no access. I remember calling for the kids and getting silence. I remember walking away, humiliated and defeated. I had been set up to fail. Jenna explained she found the email years later and kept it hidden because she was afraid of Marla. "I thought if I told you she'd hurt us more," she whispered. Her voice trembled. I didn't know how to fight her. Cole's bravado cracked. "Why didn't you tell me?" he demanded, anger raw and bewildered. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "You were a kid," Jenna said. "I wanted to protect you." Marla tried to interrupt, to reframe the story. Her voice sounded smaller. Russell watched her with the patience of a man who'd seen this move before. Linda put a steady hand on my shoulder. "You were never the one who walked away," she said. Relief washed through me, mingled with a fierce anger. The humiliation from the will shifted into a different energy, one that wanted answers and accountability. But new questions rose immediately. If Marla had doctored bank access, had she also manipulated other records? Had she found and hidden assets my father had kept protected? Jenna's admission about the email suggested deeper tampering. Russell tapped a file on the table I hadn't opened. "There's more," he said. "We can subpoena bank records and trace transfers, but we'll need someone willing to testify." Jenna's face didn't falter. "I will," she said, small but steady. "I want the truth out." Her bravery warmed me in a way guilt never could. Yet I also knew what that meant, sitting under oath, reliving betrayals, watching my ex try to paint us as unreliable. It could hurt the kids again if we were reckless. "Are you sure?" I asked. She nodded. "Yes, I don't want this secret to hurt anyone else." Russell folded his hands. "If Jenna testifies and the records show manipulation, your claim strengthens considerably. If not, Mrs. Dixon might still be able to challenge the transfer." The room tightened. The choice was clear and dangerous. Expose Marla now and risk a public war, or stay silent and possibly lose everything my father left me. Jenna looked at me, steady and small. "Dad," she said, "let's do it right." I swallowed and nodded, ready to follow her lead, quietly determined. Russell flipped the page with the drama of a judge delivering sentence. The rustle felt louder than the air conditioning, louder than the clock, louder than Cole's uneven breathing. Everyone leaned forward, Marla with clenched teeth, Jenna with folded hands, Cole with twitching knees. Russell cleared his throat. "Page 2 of the will contains the distribution of assets." The room held its breath. He read slowly, each word its own hammer strike. "All business shares, liquid accounts, and real property are transferred to my son, Frank Delaney." A gasp broke from somewhere behind me, maybe Jenna, maybe Linda. I couldn't look away from Russell's steady expression. He continued, "This includes controlling shares of Delaney Freight Holdings, the North Garage property, the Seaview rental house, and all contents thereof." My mind reeled. 2 properties. I'd barely scraped together rent in some of my lowest years, and now my name was attached to places I'd never seen. Then Russell read the part that made Cole jolt upright. "Additionally, the 1968 Mercedes 280 SL, restored and maintained, is left to my son Frank." Cole's mouth fell open like a hinge snapped loose. "The Mercedes, he left Dad the Mercedes." Russell didn't even blink. "Correct." A ripple of whispers spread around the table, client assistants, the junior lawyer, even the receptionist half hidden in the doorway. A few exchanged looks like they were watching a live soap opera. Marla's jaw tightened so hard I heard her teeth click. This is absurd. That car was practically family history. Russell turned a page. Mrs. Dixon, you are not listed as a beneficiary. The words hit her like a slap. Color drained from her face. She tried to form a rebuttal, but her voice came out in a rasp. And Cole, she managed. Russell paused. You could feel the room lean in. Cole Delaney inherits nothing unless he completes the humility provision outlined here. Cole shot to his feet. Humility provision, what the hell is that supposed to mean? Russell read the clause aloud. The grandson Cole Delaney shall demonstrate sincere humility and accountability as determined by his father, Frank. Only upon Frank's written statement of approval shall any trust disbursement be released. Translation, Cole had to earn it. The room erupted in hushed awe, gasps, murmurs, a few stifled laughs from the staff who pretended not to care 5 minutes ago. Cole whipped around like he could physically swat away the sound. You've got to be kidding me, he snapped. He wants Dad to judge me, Dad. Linda chuckled softly. Looks like your grandfather knew what he was doing. Cole ignored her. He pointed at me, his face blazing red. You expect me to grovel for money that should have been mine. That's not what it says, I replied quietly. It says you have to show humility. That's the same thing, he barked. Marla finally found her voice. Russell, this clause is outrageous. We'll contest it. You can, Russell said calmly, but you won't win. Humiliation, fear, and rage crashed across Cole's face in waves. His eyes darted to the Merced's keys still resting beside the file, then something snapped. Over my dead body. He shouted, lunging forward as his hand shot toward the keys, and the room exploded into motion. Cole yanked the keys like they already belonged to him. His hand wrapped around the silver ring with a desperation that didn't match the smirk he tried and failed to hold on his face. The room jolted to life instantly. Sir, you need to step back, one of the building's security officers said, already moving toward him. They must have been waiting outside the conference room after sensing things were about to blow. Cole twisted away from the guard, keys rattling as he held them up. This car is mine. It's been in the family longer than I've been alive. Russell raised an eyebrow. And your grandfather left it to Frank, not you. I'm his grandson, Cole shouted. And not the beneficiary, Russell replied smoothly, hands folded as if he were commenting on the weather. The second security guard stepped in and Cole tried to jerk away dramatically. Instead, he tripped on the leg of a chair and stumbled forward, nearly crashing into the table. A chorus of gasps burst from the spectators near the doorway. Even Marla flinched, though she quickly tried to mask it with outrage. Don't touch my son. And she snapped desperately, though Cole's behavior was doing most of the touching, mainly to everyone's patience. Security finally steadied him upright. His shirt was wrinkled, his face flushed, and humiliation dripped off him like sweat. Someone in the hallway whispered, "Yikes," and Cole's ears turned scarlet. Russell didn't miss a beat. "Officers, please release him. He is not under arrest, merely confused about property law." The phrase "confused about property law" drew a few muffled laughs. Cole froze, humiliated. Russell turned to me. "Frank, the keys legally belong to you. Please take them." The entire room shifted its attention toward me. My hand hovered for a moment, and I felt something I hadn't felt since before the divorce, before the shame and the rumors and the years of swallowing my own voice. I closed my fingers around the keys, firm, steady, like picking up a piece of myself I'd forgotten I ever owned. Cole stared at me, betrayed. "Dad, you're really taking them." "They're mine," I said quietly. "Grandpa wanted it that way." The simplicity of the statement shut him down harder than any argument. While Cole seethed, Russell slid another manila envelope my way. "One more thing," he said. "Your father instructed us to provide you with a small item found in the Mercedes during its final servicing." Inside was a flash drive, black, unmarked, cold as a pebble. My heartbeat quickened. "What's on it?" Russell shook his head. We haven't opened it. Attorney-client privacy extended beyond his passing. Whatever he left is meant for you. Linda leaned forward. Your father was thorough, Frank. He planned this. Marla hissed. This is ridiculous, but her voice cracked. Jenna touched my arm gently. Daddy, the car's glove compartment. Grandpa must have hidden something there too. The flash drive was found inside the car for a reason. Cole scowled, still guarded by security, eyes locked on the drive like it held the inheritance he'd just watched slip through his fingers. Jenna straightened, voice small but firm. Play it, she said, glancing at the others, before someone else tries to destroy it. And suddenly everyone's eyes were on the flash drive and on me. My father's voice filled the room, steady as ever. If you're hearing this, the truth finally surfaced. The moment the flash drive's video began playing on Russell's laptop, every whisper, every breath, every twitch in that conference room went still. My father sat in the frame at his old workbench, the lamp casting a warm circle of light over his tired face. He looked older than I remembered, but clear-eyed, like a man who decided this time he wouldn't leave things unsaid. I'm recording this, he continued, because certain people have rewritten history. I won't let my son suffer for it again. Marla stiffened immediately. Cole glanced at her, confused. My father went on. You know who you are, he said, looking directly into the camera. You blamed Frank for financial troubles he never caused. You told him he was irresponsible while you quietly siphoned money out of our business accounts and funneled them through side channels. A soft electronic beep in the video signaled documents appearing on screen, scanned account transfers, dated signatures, and one name repeated over and over, Marla Dixon. Gasps rippled through the room. My father continued, voice growing firmer. I tried to protect Frank by moving what remained into separate holdings. You retaliated by convincing the kids that Frank was unstable and unfit. You locked him out of accounts he was legally entitled to. You humiliated him because you thought no one would ever uncover your trail. A shaky sound escaped Jenna, something between a sob and relief. Cole swallowed hard, blinking fast. Marla tried to stand. This is manipulated. This is a lie. Russell put a calm hand up. Sit down, Mrs. Dixon. My father kept talking, oblivious to the chaos. His words were detonating in real time. To my grandchildren, he said gently, your father never abandoned you. He fought. He was blocked by someone who feared losing control. When you're old enough to understand bank records and power dynamics, look again. Look closely. Cole slowly sank back into his chair. I watched the realization drain the last of the anger from his face. He whispered, barely audible, Mom, is this true? Marla said nothing. She couldn't. The video shifted. My father's expression softened as he looked off-screen for a moment, then back at the camera. As for the business, he said, I left it under protection because I knew Frank would be modest enough to ignore his own value. But the company grew because of the workers who believed in the Delaney name, and they'll need someone who treats them like more than numbers. He leaned forward, face filling the screen. Frank, the company won't survive without someone the workers trust. The final line punched straight into my chest. They need you now. The screen went black. A silence deeper than anything that had come before settled over the room, heavy, expectant, almost reverent. All eyes shifted toward me. But before I could speak, before I could even exhale, Russell slowly closed the laptop and looked directly at me. And I felt the weight of an entire legacy pressing against my next decision. For once, everyone in the room waited for my decision. Not Russell, not my father's ghost, not the past, me. It was a strange, almost eerie feeling, like stepping into a pair of shoes I didn't realize had been mine all along. The room stayed hushed, heavy with the aftershock of my father's message. Even the security guards looked uncertain, as if they weren't sure whether to keep watch or bow their heads. Cole was the first to break. He stood awkwardly, his earlier rage drained into something fragile and unfamiliar. Dad, I messed up. His voice cracked, the bravado gone. I didn't know, I swear I didn't know what Mom did. I thought you just bylaid. He looked at me, eyes red. I'm sorry. Just give me a chance to fix things. If he'd said it with honesty alone, I might have believed him. But there was fear in the plea, fear of losing money, losing status, losing the identity he'd built around everything, not me. Before I could answer, Jenna moved to my side. Her hand gripped my arm softly. Dad, she whispered, I'm sorry too for not telling you, for not stopping Mom. Tears welled in her eyes. I wanted so badly to believe she was right, but I know better now. Her sincerity warmed something deep inside my chest, something that had been cold for years. Marla, arms folded tight, glared at all three of us like we were disobedient actors ruining her script. Frank, this is becoming a circus. You are not suited to run a company. You don't understand the responsibilities involved. Linda snorted, pretty rich coming from someone who couldn't manage her own honesty. Marla shot her a venomous glare, stay out of this. But Linda didn't. She reached into her purse and pulled out a worn, sealed envelope, the edges softened by time. Frank, she said, stepping closer, your father gave me one last thing. He said to hand it over only when Marla started denying her involvement. Marla's face drained. Don't, she breathed. Linda, you don't know what you're talking about. But Linda pressed the envelope into my hand. I opened it slowly. Inside were copies of child support adjustments, bank slips, and withdrawal authorizations, each signed by Marla. She'd siphoned support payments into her personal ventures, then told the kids I never paid enough. The final page was a handwritten note from my father. If Frank doubts himself, show him this. He didn't fail his children, lies did. My knees felt weak. After years of swallowing guilt, the truth sat in my hand like a stone that finally stopped rolling. Cole stared at the documents, horrified. Mom, Marla took a shaky step back. It wasn't like that, you don't understand. I looked at her, really looked. The years of manipulation, the rewriting of history, the confident smirks whenever I took the blame, the way she always needed me small so she could stand taller. Russell cleared his throat gently. Frank, your father's estate and the company board await your decision. Will you step into leadership or do you wish to assign a proxy? Everyone leaned in. I straightened slowly. I'll take responsibility, I said, but first I locked eyes with Marla. I need to speak with her, alone. Jenna gasped, Cole stiffened, Marla's face paled, and the room held its breath as I followed her into the hall toward the conversation that had been decades overdue. Marla crossed her arms like a queen losing her crown. We stood alone in a quiet side hallway, the conference room door clicking shut behind us. The buzz of voices blurred into a distant hum. Here, without an audience, her confidence wavered, just a flicker, but enough for me to see the cracks. Frank, she began sharply, this whole spectacle is ridiculous. You're letting everyone twist the truth, my truth. I took a slow breath. For most of my life, I'd backed down at this point. Let the argument die. Let peace win, even if it cost me pieces of myself. Not this time. No, I said quietly. Your truth was the one that twisted everything. Her shoulders snapped rigid. Excuse me. I held up the envelope Linda had given me. You lied about the bank accounts. You lied to the kids. You withheld messages and told them I abandoned them. You spent child support on your own projects, then said I never paid. Her lips tightened, chin lifting. I did what I had to do. You were weak, Frank, always too sentimental. Someone had to take control. By lying, I asked, by destroying every memory that didn't fit your story. She laughed once, sharp, brittle. Oh, come on. You think Jenna or Cole would have respected you if they knew you were drowning. I built stability, Frank. I kept us functioning. No, I said, you kept me silent. For the first time in decades, the words came without hesitation. You told them I wasn't ambitious, I continued. Told them I wasn't reliable. Told them I walked away. You painted me as a failure so you could be the hero holding everything together. Marla's eyes glistened, not with remorse, but with anger. I made the hard choices. You never could. You're not built for leadership. This company your father left, you'll run it into the ground. There it was, her final weapon, doubt, the same blade she'd used on me through years of marriage, but the video, the documents, my children's faces when the truth surfaced. My father's voice steady, unwavering, they'd all welded something inside me back into place. I'm done, I said softly. She blinked. Done with what? Apologizing for things you did. The hallway felt bigger after I said it, like I'd finally stepped out of a cage I didn't realize I'd built around myself. Marla's face twisted in disbelief. You can't actually believe you'll survive without me protecting you. I survived because you left, I said, and now I know the truth, so do the kids. You don't get to rewrite this anymore. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The queen had finally lost her crown, and without it she looked smaller, ordinary, human. I stepped past her. For once, she didn't block my way. When I opened the conference room door again, the noise hit me like a wave. Russell gathering papers, Linda whispering to Jenna, security quietly stationed by the wall. But Cole stood apart from everyone else, back against the far wall. Tears streamed down his face. He wasn't hiding them. He wasn't pretending. He was waiting for me. Cole held out the Merced's keys, not to steal, but to return them. His hand trembled slightly, the polished silver catching the conference room lights. For the first time in years, he didn't look like a man chasing status or control. He looked like a little boy who'd finally realized the grown-up world wasn't as simple as picking sides. Dad, he said quietly, I don't want the car or the money, not right now. He swallowed. I just want us to try again, for real this time. The keys jingled softly between us, not a prize but an apology. I stepped closer. Cole, wanting that means more than anything in the will. He shook his head. I don't expect forgiveness. I was awful to you. I believed everything Mom said because it was easier than admitting I didn't know you. His voice cracked again. If you give me a chance, I'll earn it. I'll listen. I'll be better. For a moment, I saw him not as the arrogant young man who mocked me, but as the kid who used to follow me around hardware stores, asking what every tool did. I'm willing to try, I said, but there will be boundaries, respect, honesty. You'll have to show it, not just say it. Cole nodded immediately. I will, I promise. That was enough for now. He pressed the keys fully into my palm, and this time taking them felt like claiming something bigger than a car. Dignity, history, the part of myself I'd let go too easily. Jenna rushed forward and wrapped her arms around me. Dad, I'm so proud of you, she whispered. Her voice was warm, relieved, like she'd been waiting her whole life for this chapter to turn. Linda appeared behind her, wiping away a tear she pretended wasn't there. Well, Frank, she said with a grin, I expect a ride in that Mercedes, preferably somewhere with good pie and terrible country music. I laughed, a true, full laugh I hadn't felt in years. Deal. Russell stepped over with the thick estate folder. Frank, the board will reach out later this week. You can take your time before stepping into leadership. Your father built this with you in mind. For once, I didn't shrink from the responsibility. I nodded. I'll be ready. Cole wiped his eyes again. Dad, can I come by tomorrow just to talk? Tomorrow, I said, and the next day if you keep doing the work. He nodded once, grateful. As the conference room emptied, I lingered for a moment, staring at my reflection in the darkened window, older than the boy my father once guided, steadier than the man Marla tried to dismantle. I whispered to the empty room, letting the truth settle fully for the first time. My father left me more than money. He left me a spine. Ian with the keys in my pocket, Jenna at my side, and the future finally belonging to me, not Marla, not lies, not shame. I stepped out of the conference room toward a life rebuilt on honesty and courage. Subscribe for more stories where truth comes out one page at a time.